Hello folks, Neil McRae here from Domino Arcade, another Domino Arcade video, and we're using a bit of music, the music from Gwen Stacy on the glorious game Venom. I'm talking today about my streaming rig. So this is the 6020 aluminium design rig. Phil Grimaldi, Caldiangelo kind of pioneered it. It's completely wireless, you don't need to plug it into anything, it runs off batteries. Some of these big kind of muckle batteries that put USB power out, and that's one of the key considerations. Everything you need to put on this, you need to power it, and how you powering it from USB is the easiest way of doing that. There's other ways, but they're complex. The other thing I'd say is don't cheap out on the cables. Every streaming issue I've ever had has been a duff cable, so buy quality cables. Light's important. I use these aperture lights. Actually, they're a gift from my Pinside Secret Santa. Thank you, Santa. You actually can't buy these specific types anymore, but you can get others, but they're not cheap. There's cheaper lights off on Amazon, eBay, etc. But just make sure that you can power them via USB-C, which these ones you can. I also use, so in terms of clamps, I use Camvate clamps. These are the ones with these red handles, and then I use a couple of small rig clamps. This one in particular I find really useful because it doesn't move. And then I use this kind of arm clamp for the camera that faces the player. I'll talk a bit about cameras in a moment. The other key thing is the Axoon CineView HE. So this is completely wireless HDMI transmitter. It runs again off USB power, and it beams a 1080p picture to the receiver. I've used six of these at the same time at the UK Open, and it works like a dream. And these are about $500 off Amazon. A lot of you might say that's expensive, so I work in the broadcast industry. Let me tell you, a wireless broadcast for a camera is, in professional land, is tens of thousands of pounds, so it's cheap in comparison to that. And then obviously you need some viewability, so I've got this little screen that lets me see what's on the play field, just so we can line it up right and make sure we can see it, because sometimes it's not easy to see it, especially the cameras I use, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's just easier to have that camera there. The whole thing's on wheels, so you can move it around, and it works really well. Let's talk a little bit about cameras. So my go-to camera is the Canon EOS M6 Mark II. I'm a Canon guy. I know the Canon menus and system, they're all the same. I just find it easy to use, and it works great. The downside of this camera is that it doesn't have USB power, so I'm using this kind of what we call a coupler, which is a fake battery that then goes to a USB adapter, and then I can plug it in. It works great. But there's a downside to this camera. You can't buy it anymore. Canon end of life the whole M series. Well, they haven't. They haven't officially, but everyone knows that they have. And they're kind of moving everyone to the R series, which is fine. But this camera is great. And actually, one of the great things about this camera is it's a proper digital sensor camera. There's no shutter. Full frame as well, I think. But I use this lens. It's a Sigma f1.4 16mm lens. It's a beauty, and it is great for the playfield. It's great for the score cam, but it's really great for the player cam. You get this lovely bokeh effect. Mark from Backhand Pinball did my stream for the UK Open. If you go on YouTube and look at his videos, you'll see what I mean in terms of how great the players look. The camera I'm using and the lens I'm using are not cheap. The camera's about $900, the lens is about $400. It's not cheap, but again, if you look at the videos that Mark did and some of my videos, you'll see how good the picture quality is. And that's what counts in a video, is what, the receiver you're trying to measure is someone's eyeballs. How good does it look? You really need 1080p with 60 frames a second, which adds another complexity with some cameras. In the UK, we're 50 frames a second on TV, so they only sell a 50 frame second camera, which is nuts. So I actually imported these cameras from the US, or I think I bought them when I was in the US, one of the two. With the Sony camera, the camera I'm now using is a Sony, I think it's ZV-E5. Or ZV-1-E5. It's Sony's vlogging camera, but it's one where you can change the lens, and you can buy the same lens, a Sigma lens. It clamps right on and it works beautifully. Big advantage of Sony cameras is they do USB-C power, so you don't need any couplers, just plug and go. They work really great. I would argue that the quality is slightly better on the M6. But it's marginally different. And the M series cameras you can't buy anymore, so I wouldn't recommend spending any money on them if you haven't done so already. And that's pretty much it in terms of cameras. The only other thing I'd say is this mount is kind of more flexible. I'll try and put a link to that. I can't remember which model it's called, but it's actually Jack Danger that recommended that mount to me. Thanks, Jack. The other thing you consider is make sure you can get the rig between the games that you're playing. Sometimes I'll change this lens here on the score cam to a zoom lens, like a Canon M series zoom lens, only because some games like Paragon, for example, you need a really wide view on it, and sometimes that just isn't wide enough. But for DMD games, it's largely fine. It's usually just classics that are the challenge, but also got the apps where they've got that little calculator style LED display. These lenses are fixed format, so you can't zoom with them, and being able to zoom can be quite handy. That's it, I think. Any questions on this, please ask them in the YouTube comment section. And like I say, Axun CineView HE for the wireless stuff, Canon or Sony for cameras. The instructions to build this rig are on Tilt Forums, which is a really good forum focused on competition and sensible people. Somehow they let me in. But anyway, hopefully that video was useful. Again, if you've got any questions, let me know. Whilst I mentioned it on PC, so lots of folks use gaming laptops, they work okay. You've just got to make sure you've got you probably need at least 2 USB buses that are ideally USB 3.1 or USB 2 at least. That'll give you enough bandwidth for kind of 3 or 4 cameras HDMI. The one thing though, I actually use a server now, a Xeon server with a P2000 NVIDIA Hydra card. Or Quadro card it's called. The reason I use that is most gaming rigs are limited to 1 encoding of a stream, which is fine for most streams, but if you're doing action replay, or you've got more than one stream going or more than one thing going, the Quadro card can do more than one stream, and it really makes a big difference. So I've got a desktop PC with a bunch of Magewell PCI HDMI cards in it, and a P2000 Quadro card. It's actually quite a cheap card now. It used to be really expensive. Now you can pick it up for almost nothing. And a Xeon based CPU, not a core CPU, a Xeon CPU, and OBS just purrs like a kitten on it. It works really well. Highly recommend it. That's it from me. I'm Neil McRae, and I hope you found this useful. Bye bye.